Welcome to Slayerfest 98. I'm your Scarlet Witch, aka Ian Carlos Crawford, and joining me today as my co-host is Wanda's Missing Dark Liquor.
Adam Sass.
Hi, Adam.
Hi, how are ya?
I'm okay. We're on episode 5.
Yeah, we barely survived episode 5. Each episode getting more and more difficult to survive than the last one. I can't believe people actually thought this should have been binged. So we are joined by fabulous guest stars today. First up, we have got Catherine Hahn's leg warmers.
Michael Varrati.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for joining us here. And then we've also got the azalea bushes that poison Sparky. I don't like this name at all.
Ryan Houlihan. Hello.
Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan. And then last but not least, we have Vision's Daddy Jeans.
It's me, Aaron Reese. Hi.
Hi, Aaron. Oh my gosh, I love
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be having another very gay episode of WandaVision.
So just WandaVision then?
Yeah.
I was like, who allowed this gay stuff to happen? I don't know. It feels like they tapped into it accidentally, but like it's so finely crafted. It like feels on purpose. So, props to the team.
Right, it does feel on purpose, doesn't it?
It feels very on purpose. It very much is like, oh, okay, so they're going to introduce some major queer characters, but like in like the queerest of settings. It was almost like this like little queer nest had to be feathered in order to like usher them in.
They said we have unlimited money. Get us the gayest person you can. And then Catherine Hahn walked into the room.
Exactly right.
They didn't even finish the sentence.
They really did, and they were, and the money they have poured into just really getting like these credit sequences correct. Like, yeah. I can't get over how much they are just like ghost channeling these old tones. Like, it's not amazing. A parody. It's not a parody. It's not dipped in modern at all. It's just perfect.
I was absolutely gagged by the fact that the opening credits this week were like family ties. I mean, they knew exactly what they were doing with the painted like family portrait. There was like a hint of growing pains in there. And just the amount of research that went into it. And whoever is writing the week-to-week sitcom theme songs is knocking it out of the park.
Wasn't this the Lopez's from Frozen?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, really? Oh, I mean, okay, well then. The talent.
Which she was like, listen, if we have to, we will bring back the dead fucking spirits that wrote fucking the Cinderella movie in the 50s if we need to get a cheesy song.
It's really true. And like just in the style of like how like upbeat all the other ones were, and then to have the key change of that horrific, wonderful like 80s, like everything super, like I was like, why were all these sitcoms like really sad sounding in the credits? Like it was so emotional. I was like, why was it like so heartstringy?
I remember as a kid, I didn't like the Family Ties theme song because I thought it was like too, I don't know, it was like too like sad family. I don't know.
Well, literally, their son is obsessed with Ronald Reagan. I'd be fucking sad too.
The 80s were always trying to tell us that something was beneath that surface.
Yeah, I feel like I followed the same like thoughts generally, but mine was only because the theme songs were just way too white for my liking.
Right, a little white.
I'm like, it's just a little Wonder Bread for me, and I'm hey,
it's
whatever do you mean, Aaron?
No seasoning.
It was so soft. Like I just couldn't. Like it was punishing how soft it was.
But the thing is that before we even got to the credit sequence, we had the previously on, which like changed like genres multiple times, and then you have to watch it closely because Wanda keeps changing things that were previously on the show. So then by the time you get to the credit sequence and they're like, everywhere you look or whatever, I was like, I am already tired. It's so good.
I would love to see a previously on WandaVision that's clearly been like edit fucked by Wanda, where she's like, previously on WandaVision, no one suspected anything. I'm walking around like,
Girl, I mean, there's another major network that does this, and they're called Bravo. Truly.
One thing I have to discuss at the top of this episode, because we're jumping right into this era of sitcoms, but the hair that Wanda has at the top of the episode is 100% the hair that Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen had in Full House. And and I was just like looking at her, and I was having all of these like sitcom nom like flashbacks. It was a lot.
You know, this is gonna be my age showing, but I loved her outfits in this episode. I loved her hair. I kept being like, oh, she looks so cute. Oh, I would wear that outfit. Like I kept thinking like
or stock up on suspenders. There's so many suspenders.
You know what, Ian? I'm not surprised.
I know it's like not shocking that I would think that, but also I feel like a lot of those, especially the suspenders outfit, is an outfit like youths would wear now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's a very like, it is that like kind of like really strong, powerful queer woman kind of outfits you usually wear.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, where it's like, yeah, we're gonna do check shirt.
But so the episode starts with them taking care of the twins. Everything with the twins makes me like emotional just because I know who they are. I'm always like, oh, my queer babies. My notes just say bottom face emoji. So Vision says that he's like, oh, reading Darwin's The Descent of Man made Billy cry even harder, which I thought was like very cute. I like that they're playing like Vision is the like quote unquote straight man here, but he's also like goofy dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he does that really well for like a character that's a robot synthezoid powered by a mind stone. Like, I don't know. I think he does the like cheesy dad stuff really well.
And it makes sense that he'd be nervous about, like, he'd be the more nervous one to have somebody like hold the boys. Like, he'd just be like, oh, you know, what if you just know?
But you know what? I feel like Vision as robot dad makes so much sense to me. Specifically, like, just I don't know, white dads in American TV sitcoms are always so rigid and stiff and kind of like unknowingly goofy, and I feel like that's where a lot of Vision's humor comes from. I actually, watching this episode made me think about Civil War, when Wanda tells him about the whole walking through the door thing. Like, you know, I feel like it's very like reminiscent of that.
Yeah, definitely. It really, you're right. It does make sense that he would be that character.
I mean, it's a natural evolution, of like where he's gone from movie to movie. I mean, he was pretty much was kind of fully formed, always this sort of like, robot doesn't know what's going on in this world.
Well, it's such an interesting way to view the character too, because it almost makes me think, unfortunately, in some ways, of the speech in Kill Bill where they talk about how Clark Kent is the disguise and Superman's the real identity. In this world, Vision is sort of putting on the disguise of a human, and it's more so the disguise of a human as filtered through pop culture. So he's representing that awkward dad stereotype because I'm sure he scanned thousands of hours of pop media, and this is what dads are supposed to be. And I just love that that's sort of the mask that he's wearing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that the mask too. It's like, it's really honest. Both of their masks are really superheroes are really honest to who they were in the larger MCU, where Vision's like a nice guy trying to like work all of it out with the information available to him, find solutions, and Wanda is just like a control freak chaos demon. But I like too that that they slipped so nicely into those roles, which were stereotype roles for sitcoms for years, which was like Bewitched is, the guy trying to put it all together like a nice guy, and then this control freak wife who keeps meddling, and like it fits really well. I'm curious to see where we go from here on, because sitcoms changed like pretty drastically in the 90s, and I understand if they go the direction of like Sabrina, because I don't want to see Vision and Wanda be like fat husband and bitch wife, like I really don't think that's a good dynamic for them. So I hope that they can continue to avoid that trope wise, because so far the tropes have applied so well to them. and they really have slipped very easily into those roles. And it's been fun because, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you've talked about this, but it's fun because the duality of like what's going on beneath the surface is great, but the sitcom episodes themselves are cute and nice. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't, I'm not sitting there waiting for like the bottom to fall out. I'm kind of like, oh, they got a dog.
Well, like it makes all of this so much more earned because we want her fake sitcom life to continue. Like I'm like oh no, this is like way too I don't like talking about how much like unimaginable grief she is like pumping into everyone's mind grapes. Like I want to go back to like, just please go back to that part where Catherine Hahn is knocking on the door being like, well, Ralph again.
But you know what's really great about this whole thing and how it's unrolling is it couldn't have been more prescient in the time we're living, because this is literally a show about using pop culture as an escape from the trauma of what we're experiencing. And like after a year and a half of being stuck at home and how invested we are in our shows and our movies, even more than we were before, because it allows us to not think about it. I think that this being the MCU flagship show on Disney Plus first at this moment in time couldn't have been better.
I mean, how could they have planned? How could they have known? I mean, maybe Disney did, but how could they have known that like it would be a show about the nightmare of like being trapped in domestic bliss? And like it's a little bit like, I mean, they used the word quarantine this week, and my husband shuddered, and I was like, I know, but it's so. I mean, all these people are trapped, right? Like they're trapped in their home. That's so interesting, and it is also interesting to see kids being raised in these weird circumstances, because that's also like happening in real life. And in the outside world, governments are just like, what the fuck do we do? How do we start fixing this? What do we know? Like, and some of them are bad actors and some of them are good actors. It's all shadowy. But like within that house, they're trying to just like keep that outside and be like, sometimes mommy gets sad. It's like, it's just so tonally perfect. And I don't know. They have such a home run on their hands that's so well timed. Like I obviously have seen. I mean, I went to a 22-hour Marvel movie marathon, so like I'm in it to win it at this point. But I haven't been so engaged with Marvel in a long time, because it felt like the movies just were doing what they felt like they had to do a little bit, like, and they kept getting bigger and bigger. There was a lot of like super inflation happening, and like it felt like they were like, well, we have to finish up this storyline, even though I don't think the politics or like the like tone really matched up with where we were culturally. And I was starting to feel like less enveloped in that, like in the characters and the universe and the themes. And then this has sucked me in so well. Like and every week it's better and better, because every week it matches what we have been feeling, which is just like, okay, can things get better? Like, can we just go forward? Like, you know, and it just gets worse and worse. Oh my God, it's so good.
I was just going to say, like, something you touched on there. Like, I feel like they're hitting on these emotional beats very serendipitously, because this, like, I love the Marvel movie. Like, I've just been loving them. And, you know, like some more than others, obviously, but like, pretty much all of them, like, I've enjoyed watching, and I get plugged in and I get to that. This is the first one that feels like really important to me. Like it's getting me through something in a way that the other ones were just sort of entertainment. This is like actually like really speaking to me in this important way. And they keep like obviously a lot of this was filmed pre-pandemic, and so it just is, it's touching on a lot of these things serendipitously that are just ringing so true for me. Like this whole overarching like feeling of like people telling her, listen, this is not sustainable. This can't go on this way. And she's like, I know, what am I supposed to do right now? Like that is how I feel right now, where it's just like, yeah, I know I'm supposed to be dealing with this in a different way. Like, what other answer do I have right now?
Vision literally says, like, in the middle of the episode, the credits start rolling, and he's like, what, are we going to go to bed now and just pretend like nothing's happening? Watch TV? And it's like, yes.
I've gone to bed just to roll the credits on a day.
Yes, 100%.
Absolutely. That is a flex if I've ever seen one. And I mean, that was technically like the end of the episode, but still, just the irony of Wanda being like, sorry, it's my party and I cry if I want to. Let's wrap this shit up and go to bed. Thanks.
He was straight up like, you can't control me like you control everyone else. And she was like, can't I? And it was so good.
And that's the thing, like, Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, this all speaks to really what have been thinking all along about this, because when you talk about the connection to the MCU and going to see those 22 hours and connecting with this in a very different way, it makes sense because everything before this was so macro. It's like the whole universe is on the line, and that's cool and it's epic. And you want that, I guess, out of a 3.5 hour movie that you're going to the theater to see. But it feels like this phase is really bringing it into the micro, and we're dealing with one person's tragedy and one person's trauma, and like really the nuance of that. And I think if that is the direction this new phase is going, I think it's exciting because it deals with this fantastical world in a very, very different way that, like, unfortunately we can relate to right now in ways that we couldn't when a giant space purple raisin pursed man snaps his fingers and everyone disappears,
To
Yeah.
That's
that,
true.
I will say last night, so my husband's like has watched some of these movies, and when he does, they like leave his head right away. So so he's needed a lot of refreshing, and even like within the moment I'll have to just be like, hey, that actually is referring to the but we like caught up with like Infinity War last night, and even then, like it does, like it's a gift that WandaVision, it seems to be retroactively giving these previous movies, because Infinity War is hitting very, very hard. After having watched at least the lion's share of these episodes, because it was that snap still remains very traumatic just to even watch. Like it's I don't want to downplay how like really awful that just felt to watch, in a very powerful storytelling way. And I really love that they're honoring that in this. And I know we all talked about this last episode where with Monica coming back like quite out of the blue, and sort of her reintroduction really showing how like, oh yeah, like this is just the ripple effects of all of this. Like, fixing it has its own ripple effects too, but like it's just going to be like this big mess. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
I feel like also too, one of the things um to really understand what comes into the MCU after this, is to the point earlier of focusing on these smaller stories. One of the things I've always been intrigued with is how are they actually going to bring the X-Men into this universe, simply because of the way that Marvel handles storytelling. And the X-Men stories are so much smaller, and then sort of grows into this grandiosity, um, rather than always having the fate of the world. Now, don't get me wrong, like there are lots of cataclysmic X-Men events, but they are always person-led stories first. And I feel
Yeah.
like specifically what's happening with both Wanda and Monica, I think will allow that to sort of bloom into fruition in a way that feels organic for this universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like a really important point, and probably why a lot of queer folks love the X-Men, is that it always is like the story about the people first. While, and of course, Aaron, you and I, we do read other Marvel stuff, but like a lot of the other stuff isn't always so character driven, and I think that's kind of been a little bit of what's been missing from the MCU. Like we got Thor, we got Captain America, we got Iron Man, and then it felt like those were the only personalities in the Avengers.
Yep.
The other characters didn't, like, I mean, the other characters were great. Clearly, I still liked Wanda in the Avengers, but we didn't get much about her. Like Age of Ultron was kind of like the extent of her intro and character development, and then they didn't do much, just because, I mean, when you have 85 characters in a movie, it's really hard. They balance them all well with like giving them good scenes, but this is more like they're bringing like nuance and like just depth to her character that I feel like we liked her because we could see that it could be there, but now they're actually showing it to us.
Absolutely.
But so start going into the episode, the twins, Agnes arrives. Vision has been, for the last like 2 episodes, kind of like there is something going on here. Here, she doesn't edit him out, right? Because immediately he's like, oh, nervous, can't touch the babies. And Agnes is kind of like, Catherine Hahn is so good in this scene when she just stops and is like, do you want me to take it from the top? Like I thought
Yes.
was so good.
It was so good. I have to say, personally, my power went out just as it cut to Wanda's patented, what did you just fucking say, face? And it cut out, and I swear to God, I didn't know it was the power went out at first. I literally thought like they were just stepping up the edits, like the Wanda edits. Like I really thought like she was like, oh, she just pulled the plug on the whole show, and they're gonna all walk in different casts. Like
the power of Disney to turn off your TV, Adam.
This is like, oh no, I'm seeing too much. I saw too much behind her own curtain. Yeah.
But like I thought the acting in that scene is so good because also I know like Twitter is also a little bit torn about this. And after this episode, people are like, no, it's definitely Wanda. I still don't 100% think it's Wanda. I also don't think it's Agnes. I thought that at first. I don't think it's Agnes either. I think there is something else because both like in scenes like this, both Wanda and Agnes seem a little confused. But I couldn't tell because Wanda has like this unhinged look in her face, which Elizabeth Olsen does really well. And I know that look really well where it's like, I'm going to keep moving. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my fucking shit if I address the thing that just happened. Like, I feel like that's me at work all the time.
The cost of acknowledging it is too high to pay.
Yeah.
It's those situations where you just want to scream at somebody like, work with me here. Like, I am doing all of this, but you just shut the fuck up. And it's like, those people don't even want to be there. They're not appreciating all the work that's like going into this. But I mean, it's the same feeling you feel when you're like sometimes my parents will say things and I'm just like, can you just shut up? Like, I'm doing so much stuff. I do not need your feedback on like what I chose to publish on a blog 2 weeks ago. Like, just shut up. But like, you can't do that. So you just sort of like channel that rage into just like, you use it to propel yourself forward because you don't want to mix like rage and love, obviously. So you can just feel like, and I will say the whole world, we haven't even touched on, something about the color grading, like obviously it's very 80s, but there's also like a red aura or like a red tint to things that like is off and like the camera isn't properly focused and you can feel that she a little bit like if it's Wanda or if it's Wanda like being if Wanda has like, because my working theories are either it's Wanda or it's like Mephisto or somebody has put a spell on everything, but Wanda's in control of what happens in the spell or whatever. I you can feel that she's like white knuckling it, right? Like she's holding everything together. I mean, the mailman at one point is like, your mom won't let him get too far away. And you can tell that was just Wanda's eye like twitches. And you can tell she was like, I didn't do a good enough job there. Or like, I don't have enough control over him, but I also don't have time to deal with that. So just like go deliver mail. I can't deal with this. And she says like, do you think I'm getting all these people to their doctor's appointments and to blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, I do. And I think you're exhausted.
Yeah,
I think from a comic book perspective, this is really fascinating to me because Agatha, or Agnes in this case, has a very dualistic relationship with Wanda in the comics. So like in the Scarlet Witch solo book, like she is essentially like her kind of a sensei of sorts for her. And she's dead, but she kind of guides her through this sort of like witchy rite of passage. And they kind of retcon some of what Wanda's like original basis of her powers are. And I bring this up because clearly Marvel is aware of this and they're tinkering with this with the whole hex idea, right? Specifically, Wanda's original powers being that like she could just throw hex bolts which would alter the probability of something, which is very, very similar to like early adopter Jean Grey. Like it was just whatever the plot needed to foil something. So it's like, oh, like someone with a gun is like, holding several people hostage. Wanda throws a hex bolt and, like the shaft is jammed or like little things like that.
But she had magical plot powers.
Yes.
And like
playing around with both of those at the same time. And I think it's fascinating for me. Oh my, I want to nerd out so bad, but I don't have the time.
What I really like about this scene, and from the beginning of this show, we've seen a lot of people, and I think this happens when pop culture has one reference point. It's like, oh, something's weird, something's surrealistic, so we're just going to call it Lynchian. And, that's fine. And Adam, I know you're a big Twin Peaks fan, so I'm sure you'll jump in on this. But throughout so far, I haven't really seen anything that I would say was Lynchian until this specific moment when Agnes says, do you want me to take it back to one? Because it's not just that it's weird and it breaks the reality, it's deeply uncomfortable.
And I was going to say, it hurts to watch.
They sit in it for a really long time. And that's so like there have been Lynch moments, like namely like Herb cutting through the wall with the saw, and like they're like, "Hey Herb, you're cutting through that wall there," and he's like, interesting. Like he's doing it. Like that's like it is the like Lynch definitely, especially later Lynch, is all about like it work like forcing people to go through like 3 beats longer than your body says it should last. Like it's gonna like we're gonna have like a ooh it's a twist moment, but then we're literally just gonna go back and forth. No music, no nothing comfortable, and you're just gonna sit there until your brain is just kicked out of the normal rhythm it's expecting to go in.
Which is such a good device to use for grief. I mean, like, we're on a Buffy podcast. It's touches of the body. Like, it is moments where you're like, oh, this is all real. And all of these people are trapped in this, and this is horrible. And like no amount of adorable music and kids and like a dog doing a backflip and like, like none of that is going to make it less horrible in this moment that all of this is happening. Like, I just want all of them to go, like, they look like they're in so much pain. Like, I mean, even Agnes, who I believe is like something else is going on with her. Like she's a little more aware, she's a little bit more cued in or something. But even she is just like, do you want me to take it from the top? In the most terrified voice. And you're like, I want her to take it from the top. I want her to go home. I want her to take a nap. I want her to go have some milk. Like, I don't know what I want, but it's not this. And like, that is the feeling of grief. I want you to go do something else. I want to go do something else. I want you to be able to, I mean, it's like in the body where she's like, I want her to brush her hair or have juice. And it's like, that's what I want is just all of the nice stuff. And you can't have it. And it's so dark, and it's so much more earned than some of the other dark stuff we've seen in the MCU. I love the MCU, but there's whole things that are just glossed over or they're like supremely sad and motivating, but like for the audience, it's like a character we spent 2 minutes with. Do you know what I mean? That seems to come up a lot because they have 3 hours and they have to get, they have to destroy the solar system or whatever they have to do.
Right.
And this is taking so long, but it's so much more effective. And like Wanda's grief is the first time, other than like when Spider-Man snapped out, that I felt grief in the Marvel universe. And it's good because this world bending shit should have consequences, or then what's the point? And like, it's great.
And I think it speaks exactly to the point you brought up earlier. Once that moment happens and we lose the music and it gets deeply uncomfortable, and then it gets that red aura, like the tracking is off. It's a grief spiral. Everything about the moment is slightly off. And it takes them all just that fraction of a second longer than TV normally would to recover, because that's life. And I think it's brilliant.
It's like things not happening the way you want them to. It's like one of these things where you kind of like, and it's kind of, grief is this on a macro scale, but like, it's just like, you're not playing along. You're not doing this. You're not saying it the right way that I want you to. This thing isn't unfolding the way I want it to. None of this is right. And I'm going to keep pressing on. And so I just, and Ryan, you brought up Mephisto. So Aaron, we're gonna ask. I want to ask, like, Mephisto. What's to do with Mephisto? Like, all I know about Mephisto is he's basically like Marvel Devil.
Yes, I mean essentially.
Okay,
there have even been like occasional retcons where like he is like the father of like the demonic race that like that Nightcrawlers are descended from, and then like there's lots and lots of retcons. But one of my favorite Mephisto stories, to tell you kind of like how Mephisto works, And I know a lot of Marvel fans don't like this book, but I think it's kind of poignant. It's called Spider-Man One More Day.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Oh, I knew you were going to bring it up.
And I think it just goes to show you the type of entity you're dealing with. I mean, essentially, for those that don't know, Aunt May basically like is on the brink of death from this is like kind of like a fallout after Civil War. People like villains know who he is, they know his identity, and so she is attacked because of that. So he reaches out to, or Mephisto pops up in the form of a little girl. It's always a little girl, and says, "I can fix this for you if if you give me your relationship with MJ." And he does, and it retcons like the entirety of Peter's life in terms of his reaction, his like relationship with MJ. And it's really twisted and it's botched. But here's the thing in terms of especially WandaVision and the MCU. Marvel, as far as I'm concerned, like has a phobia of magic.
Yeah.
Like anytime like we are just like so close to magic in the MCU, we are given some like half-ass scientific explanation. Even in Doctor Strange, the idea of magic was borrowing energy from other realms,
Yeah.
which is just kind of total BS.
Right.
And so I am curious how Mephisto will work into this because he is such a prominent figure in Wanda's life and the boy's life. And like clearly they're doing the thing with Agnes. Like Agnes to me is very clearly Agatha Harkness. Like
Yeah.
it's no longer a question. So I guess I am curious as to how far are they going to go like on this magical branch? Because I feel like Marvel and Disney very much so understand that like weird science stuff makes more sense than magic to the public at least.
Right.
And like if you look at their properties, it is drenched everywhere. The X-Men are genetic anomalies. Spider-Man's bitten by a radioactive spider. The Hulk, gamma rays, like it is always.
I mean, even the Infinity Stones, they're like they popped out of the Big Bang. It's like
exactly.
Okay, who cares? Like,
Yeah,
Exactly
it's
that.
funny you mentioned that because this was actually something that I was talking about back when I know probably some Rocky fans in this group with this, but Wonder Woman 84.
Girl.
It was like, and again, problems. But what I will say is, big brave choice to just do. It's a wish. It's magic. It's a magic stone. Like that was it. Like,
well, I hope that WandaVision is the bridge into Silver Age nonsense because like I want some like full-on nonsense. Like if we're gonna be in a magical sci-fi alien superhero universe with an unlimited budget by a media monopoly, let's get ambitious. Like
yeah, I think they are. They're even now like they're calling it the Hex because it's a hexagon, and Darcy is saddled with a lot of this. Like there's a bunch of XYZ waves happening. Like they're talking about it in this way. This is the most magic-y thing we've seen.
But if someone's going to give me techno babble, I really want it to be Kat Dennings. Like
they knew who they were giving that to. But
I said this in our last episode that like, you know what? Give her like 2 lines of like, sure. She's like, it's the NBC waves. That's it. That's what it is. And we're all just like, great, we're moving.
I know that they'll never do this, but I truly, deeply would love a television series like The People's Couch, where we just sit with Kat Dennings and she comments on things going on in the MCU.
Wow.
Well, like, really, it would be me and my husband sitting next to Kat Dennings, just doing her Sex and the City dialogue until she begs us to stop.
Oh my god!
Wait, Kat Dennings was in Sex and the City?
Teen people. Samantha is running like a bat mitzvah for her character.
She's basically an adult child in Sex and the City. She's like, she's snorting.
Right, like she's this like wealthy 13-year-old who's like throwing a big birthday party and like Samantha has to do the PR for it. And she's like, I want teen people, I want to, and it's like, and it's great high arch stuff from this
Well,
Kat Dennings
and
clip.
here you go. The reason that Kim Cattrall is not returning to Sex and the City is because she's going to enter the MCU as the Beyonder. That's your.
Myself.
I would love that though. But
Kim Cattrall is Squirrel Girl.
Stop it.
but like I said this last episode too, like I don't need the Star Trek dialogue of explanations, right? Like I don't need a 5-paragraph long explanation said by some boring dude. I'm glad it's Kat Dennings being sassy and just like, here are 2 lines to explain it. If you don't get it, doesn't matter. Though just accept those words I say, explain what's going on. And I'm like, great, I do. I love you, Kat Dennings. But so to point out, we already talked about the theme song, but I gotta point out, I love the Vision pictures of him as a baby and then him in the fucking turkey outfit. So good.
And I love that he's growing slowly more and more miserable. It's just like, it's perfect sitcom hell.
Relatable.
He's like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you putting me in an Easter Bunny outfit?
So we cut to Monica. I thought this line was a little heavy-handed, but I liked it when she's like, there was a feeling keeping me down, the hopelessness feeling like drowning. It was grief. Like that's just her like being like, hey, in case you don't get it, this is about grief. But Tiana Paris is so good. Like she delivers that line. Like she sells that line, I think. I love all the stuff with like Darcy and Wu come in. The lab technician says there was something wrong, which I would assume is a reference to her powers. Aaron, can you can you accurately describe her powers? I tried to last episode and I was like, she kind of like becomes light, and like can shoot light. Ugh.
I feel like the way I've always described her powers is very, so it is cosmic, like the transference of cosmic energy. And to like simplify that, you kind of know how like Bishop's powers work in the X-Men. Like there's that sort of his ability to not only like output said energy, but like become a conduit for energy. Like I feel like Monica's very much so that. But because her energy is cosmic, it also comes with this, sort of like photon illumination field. So I feel like hopefully I did Stephanie proud because I know that's her favorite.
Do we think that she knows that she has powers yet?
I don't think she does. I don't think she knows yet.
I hope that she doesn't get powers because she passed through the wall or like, I hope it's not that kind of an explanation. I think she deserves more than like, she got powers and then that's it. And because I know that like, obviously Wanda's, they've tinkered a bit with Wanda's biography in the MCU.
Oh, girl.
We'll get there.
That's what we're calling that.
But I just hope that I know she signed for like something like 75 movies, but I just hope that they do her justice with that and that, I don't think that she knows she has powers, but I do think she knows something's up or wrong and she just doesn't want, like, it's sort of like she just instantly knew that her clothes were made from Kevlar. I think she's like starting to put together that like something happened or something's wrong or something's different. Not just about her, but like, I think she's a step ahead of most of the other characters. And that's what makes her fun, obviously. Like, her character is always fun because she's like a badass. But in this universe, in order to be a badass, she's going to have to stay at least half a step ahead of whoever's behind the Hex and whatever else. But I don't know. I mean, it's exciting that she's here. I just don't know. Like, I wonder. I wonder how her relationships with the other Marvel characters will play out if this is her introduction. Like, like when they were like, Captain Marvel could have done it, and she was like, well, we're not talking about Captain Marvel.
So Ryan, I 1,000% like agree. And one of my biggest worries coming into WandaVision was I don't want this to be the inverse of the No More Mutants thing, where Wanda then is single-handedly responsible for the birth of the mutants. Something about that does not sit right with me at all. But I also unfortunately think that is where they're leading to. And I do think Monica and mutants in general deserve much more of an inception that's not whittled down to one person. because I feel like the way, and Ian, you can tell me if I am going way too fast, but I feel like the way that I'm perceiving like the mutants entering this universe is from her simply like doing this stuff throughout the decades, that she is retroactively like creating them starting from the 50s moving forward.
Oh, no
I
kidding.
thought she
Okay.
was gonna be like the gamma rays that makes the Hulk, but for all the X-Men, and the whole world will be like, well,
That's
we've
kind
got all this radiation and we've mutated or whatever. And I'm like, honestly, is that how I want it to play out? No. But if we have to do what we have to do to get Emma Frost on screen, we have to do what we have to do to get
Well,
Emma
like,
Frost on screen.
frankly, my working theory, as someone who does not know nothing about like anything about these comics, like, so I hope you're all buckled in. But from what I know about several YouTube little explainers, so I feel like connecting these kind of dots we've been talking about with like Catherine Hahn seems part of it and aware of it, separate from the town, but also she's a little afraid, a little over her head. And then there's Wanda who's like in charge of stuff, but probably not like the big puppeteer mastermind final villain of this thing. Then you've also got this director Hayward who like obviously is escalating things
Yes.
mysteriously, and that's very MCU. Is like, oh guy, guy we trust. Oh no, we should have trusted him. But I feel like if this is something, and especially like, I'm just gonna briefly jump ahead to that ending. Like I feel like this is something where if I was like, say, the villain Mephisto, if I was Satan, if I was like up to my old tricks, if I was old Scratch, I would I would do I would basically kind of create a situation where, like, yeah, obviously Wanda has this like big grief need. Like, if like judging from the way Monica like blooped back into existence, like obviously Wanda like came to in a Wakandan field with Vision's body no longer there 5 years later. Vision's body instead was hacked into pieces in this sword facility, that sort of thing. So maybe she takes the pieces, maybe she goes. Then like basically like Mephisto kind of arrives and it's just basically like, oh, I can give you him back. Da, 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 da. And then kind of creating a scenario, a probability where he knows like, oh, her powers are ready to blow, and I basically like I Mephisto have some sort of plan that involves I need someone to start tearing down the walls between these universes.
Yes.
To allow travel, to allow the, and I need a person, I need a woman on the verge. I need, and he just tips it. And
He's a gay playwright.
exactly, he really is.
No, I feel like as someone kind of in a similar place as Adam, because my comic background is more, I grew up with DC. And so like to me, even though I know they're very different, I'm seeing this as a Crisis on Infinite Earths situation
Okay.
where like the walls between the different universes are tearing down. And I feel like Marvel, even using the press machine, is starting to prepare us for this. It's like, what if we had more than one Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland were all in the same movie? How would that work? It's crazy. Wacky multiverse. And I'm wondering if they're going to start using this. I'm not wondering, because we're already seeing it with the pivot where the walls of reality are coming down. And how they're going to bring the X-Men in is like Earth X passes Earth MCU, and somehow the mutants just like phase in and reality gets changed. And like the MCU people will think they've always been there, but we as the audience know they haven't.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, I definitely think like both of you are heading towards like a point which I feel like is a very comic book accurate, but also one of the reasons that I'm really hoping that they just kind of deter that process just a little bit is for one villain, and that is Sir Dr. Victor Von Doom.
Oh,
I'd like to think that Marvel pulled off the greatest trick in history with making us give a fuck about the Avengers and their villain. And I say this because the girls don't know like how much Victor Von Doom was doing like on the scene, behind the scenes, like down below the scenes, and like above the scenes. And one of the most interesting things about Doctor Doom is that he is both a high level like sorcerer and magician, there's even a what if where he becomes the Sorcerer Supreme. And he is also a ridiculously insane scientist that is on par with the level of like Reed Richards, Tony Stark, yada yada. Um, and one of the like I did like an IGTV video talking about books to read for WandaVision, and one book I cannot stress enough that is really great that no one talks about is this book called The Children's Crusade, and it is about after the events of House of M, everyone's looking for Wanda, including her boys. Um, and she's hiding with Doctor Doom so that he can teach her all of this like Lovecraftian level type magic and stuff. And I'm just like, yes, finally, I want a real villain so bad. Like, fuck Thanos. I'm sorry. Like, I want someone who's capable, formidable, who has a personality. Like, this is the character that inspired Darth Vader, you know? Like, and he does have like the most interesting interactions too with the X-Men, see his relationship with Storm. Like, you know, like if they could hold off for just a sliver.
And he's also,
yes.
I think he's also like, he was my favorite villain as a kid. Like he was always my favorite comic book villain. He's still one of my favorites because he's very camp, but like not camp, but like is like he's ridiculous, has robots that look just like him.
Yes.
Like they're all made to look just like him, so it confuses people often. You know, the Runaways had a Doombot as part of their group. And like his outfits are really like over the top. He lives in a fucking castle. He's got that cute little skirt. I mean, good for him. Like, I think he would fit. And you're right, Aaron. He would be the villain with a personality, which we have been severely lacking. Like, sure, Thanos was an opposition, but there wasn't like, I don't know. It wasn't.
I mean,
like,
they took Loki and they made him into a hero. So
Oh, yeah.
Like Thanos did his overnight oats on his organic farm when the girls found him at the beginning of the game. Like, I feel like I could, you know, get shot for this, but like Thanos doesn't have a personality. He's just like cis head. That's it.
Right. Well, like I really can't wait for this future where we do have like kind of Doctor Doom kind of leading things, because you know the Tumblr queers are going to be all over this and be like, what if we had Doctor Doom kissing so like, kissing?
I hate to even bring this
What
up,
if we
but
wrapped up Doctor Doom and Magneto in a scarf?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Latte art.
will say that the Fantastic Four movies almost got there with casting Julian
They
McMahon because he
did.
was
I
so
just
ridiculous.
rewatched them and like, listen, I will cap for those movies because as ridiculous as Jessica Alba looks and
Oh my god!
those like crayon blue contacts she's wearing, they have like a lot of fun. And
They do.
like those fight sequences are, if nothing else, entertaining. Is it
listen,
good?
the Chris Evans shirtlessness innovation has shaken the film industry for the last
Okay.
30 years.
Absolutely.
What a concept, the innovation.
Like, girl, I watched this Rise of the Silver Surfer literally last Sunday and was howling for like 3 minutes straight when they brought the Fantastic Four car that was literally sponsored by Dodge, girl. And it breaks up into these like 4 compartments, and they're all like, yeah, let's get Dr. Doom. And like he literally goes, let's go for a spin, and like starts to spin them all around, like because he's on the Silver Surfer's like surfboard. And I'm just like, this is so campy and so queenie, and like, yes, give me that back.
Well,
Yeah.
well, now that the walls between the universes are starting to crumble, maybe Julian McMahon walks through the front door.
He gets around too.
So wait, so getting back to WandaVision.
Bah!
So what do we think is the reason that when Monica's like, we're not talking about her, about Captain Marvel, my brain, I feel like maybe it's that Carol didn't leave them a way to contact her, like only Nick Fury had that, and like so maybe Maria didn't get to see Carol at the end, or like maybe only got to see her while Monica was blipped, because we know Carol survived the blip and Maria did apparently too. What do you all think is the reason that Monica's like, no, not Captain Marvel?
Yeah.
If my not lesbian mom, just an aunt friend of my mom's who lives with her and loves her and raised me, came home to my hometown after being on the other side of the universe and was like, I'm not going to look you up. I would be a blood feud. And I truly think she just didn't look her up. She didn't check on her. She didn't. And of course, Captain Marvel's going to be like, well, I had, other things to deal with. But I would be pissed if you didn't give me a phone call. You didn't like.
Look,
And I'm working in Sword. Like, it's
yeah.
not a hop, skip, and a jump.
Girl.
I think Monica grew up. I feel like it's a little similar to how Tony Stark was always talking to Steve Rogers a little bit, where he was like, "I grew up hearing about you. I did it." Like they had a relationship beforehand, but I feel like Maria was really missing Carol out there for all that time, and I feel like there were a lot more bad days than good in that household.
yeah.
Like you brought
Well,
up Carol.
Carol got a new haircut and a new life, and it's
You got to get on board that haircut.
So then
you got to go where Galactic Lilith Fair takes you. That's all I'm saying.
that sounds great, honestly. So we cut to the scene of Hayward. Hayward is talking to them. God, we gotta plow through this. Hayward is talking to them. I love that Monica, Darcy, and Wu all are like, no, Wanda is not a terrorist. Like, she's going through something. She didn't kill us. And Hayward is kind of like very explicitly becoming like the bad guy here, which I like.
Yeah, but it's weird though too, because as much as I don't want to like agree with this like cis het aggressive like shield guy,
But you're gonna.
but there is that moment where you're like, well, if she is responsible for this and she has taken a town of thousands hostage, you can sort of ipso facto understand his point of view, which makes a better, more nuanced antagonist, I think.
I mean, not to bring it to real world politics, but it's like he's going around being like, we need election reform. And I'm like, you know what? We do. And he's like, to do that, we're going to storm the Capitol and make it so only white people can vote. And you're like, I don't know if I agree with your methods.
Exactly. Yeah.
I also think that like Hayward is a very meta interpretation of how both like characters in the books and in the movies respond to Wanda in general. And it is this very like cis hat way of violence. It's like, okay, we can't talk to her, just shoot her out the sky. Like that should be no problem. And I also feel like it's very indicative of Wanda's experience with other men around her. Like Pietro, Magneto, and even Vision herself. She has always been sort of like kind of dinged around by the cis het of her life. And I feel like he's a good puppet for that.
It's a very U.S. military way of also like the way of thinking about how people in other countries are radicalized. Like it's a little just like, yeah, and at some point like someone like flipped the radical switch in her head, and then she like on purpose went to work for Hydra. Like I feel like that's a very U.S. thing. And Randall Park is just he's bringing such a unique like style to this whole thing. Like it's a very like it's like awkward. It's like awkward, like fun straight guy comedy, but it's also like, but not in that like kind of really overplayed way. Like it's like a Larry Sanders Show episode basically in here, where he's just kind of going around, kind of visibly looking like he's in pain, even just having conversations. Like he's having a good time with like Darcy and a little with Monica. Like it's just such a joy to have him in there, and a line for the ages to have him say that that's an oversimplification, but yes.
Well, and so also in that scene, Hayward's then like, well, I'm going to show you this footage, and shows them Wanda coming into the Sword facility to get Vision's body. A thing I didn't think about till I read Brett White's recap of this episode was the way Wu says, so Hayward is like, she, didn't, that goes against Vision's living will. And Wu finishes of, he's like, of being resuscitated, and Wu says like of becoming a weapon. And that the way Jimmy Wu says it is almost him being like, Hayward was probably turning Vision into a weapon.
Yes.
That's why
Right.
she went to get him, which I didn't think about. I mean, I was thinking that's probably why, but I didn't
Right.
get that. Maybe that was like Wu realizing it, that's why she would go get Vision.
Right. Well, because how do you know Wanda had a prior run-in with Hayward? Like, I mean, she right away doesn't need any introduction. She calls him director later on.
Right.
Like, she's like
Yeah.
director,
Right.
and like they very clearly have had some one-to-one. And the footage he's
I mean,
showing
there's
is
a
like,
ton of backstory there that we need to that we
yeah.
haven't gotten through. And like, I mean, even just when Monica walks into Sword and like her card doesn't work and he happens to be standing there, it's like, okay, this is a whole power play that I don't even know why you're doing it. And like, we need to be filled in on like, we're missing like a lot there. You know what I mean? And I feel like Wanda even has had a bunch happen that like we have no clue on. And I wonder how much of the next upcoming episodes will be devoted to that.
Yeah, I feel like Hayward is doing his own curated editing of what the story is.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's like, look at this footage of her breaking in, and it's just like, well, it got cut away just in time before like her hauling him away.
But so we cut to the sitcom. The boys get a dog. Vision says, "Good morning, unfamiliar wet animal." It's very charming. Agnes walks in, and Vision is getting even more suspicious because Agnes walks in with the thing they need, a doghouse. And Vision, now I'm getting all the names mixed up. Wanda uses her powers like pretty willy-nilly at this point, and she even like creates the dog collar, and he's like, you did it right in front of Agnes, and she's just like, oh, Agnes wasn't looking at the time. But it's like, the whole point like earlier was that they couldn't use their powers in front of anyone. Now I think as Wanda's like cracking a little bit, she's kind of like not doing the best job of keeping it all together, which relatable, right? I mean, I'm not a judgment, Wanda. Don't zap me out of Westview. So we go back to Monica, her, Darcy, and Wu. She mentions that she knows. Oh, wait, this already happened. But she mentions that she knows a great aerospace engineer. And a lot of people think it could be Reed Richards. I feel like it's not Reed Richards, but it's got to be someone, right? Because otherwise she would have just said, my friend so-and-so, if it was no one, right?
Yeah. I don't think it's Reed Richards. It's I know that everyone wants it to be, but I do think that's a red herring. Because I just think the Fantastic Four is a huge thing to bring in on top of the X-Men, on top of the existing like pre-cast somebody, on top of like it's just like this whole sitcom thing. Like it's just way too much. I think and Mephisto, like that's a lot of plot to like get through, and it's a lot to introduce the audience to. But it's also just like at that point, what's the point? Like, what would be the point of bringing in Reed? Like, what does he feed the story? Does he motivate characters? Like, I don't see where he would fit in, but I do think the physicist, astrophysicist, whatever it is going to be. I mean, it's going to be somebody important. Like, is it going to be an X-Men who like pre-powers? Is it going to be?
True.
I don't know, but it's also hard to keep straight what kind of scientist every superhero is.
Yeah.
So everyone's like, well, it's an astrophysicist. That narrows it down, and I'm like, to who? To what?
Also, I have to like slightly disagree, only in the sense that, like, yes, there are a lot of fucking scientists in the Marvel like world, and like I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be Reed, but that is like textbook Reed. But one thing I do think is interesting is that she is texting said person, so I'm not sure like if we'll even get that person's appearance in this show. But also, Marvel has been known to like stack shit up. Like this is kind of what they
That's
do.
true.
I was going to say, like, because they make such a point, because like we punch in on you had to do a totally separate camera setup to get that close up of her texting whoever that is.
Exactly.
So they're not going to do that for someone off whoever.
No, and again, this is a company that isn't necessarily known for subtlety. And I'm not just speaking the MCU. Like, I mean, next week, Emperor Palpatine could be there. We don't know. Like, it's
somehow he came back.
They're going to bring in Willow. It's going to be Willow Rosenberg, and she's going to have a witch battle.
I would love it. But so I do think the thing I've liked about this is while it feels more nuanced and bringing more depth to the MCU than we had before, but it still feels very comic book to me, with like characters coming in and out, and like it being about Wanda and Vision, but like, you know, us getting Monica Rambeau and Jimmy Woo and Darcy and these like supporting characters from other things, like having an important role in it. That feels very comic book to me. I would love if from here on out Darcy becomes one of the main MCU scientists and she can just like breeze in and out of things when they need a fucking scientist.
Again,
I think
the people's couch.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like, you know what I mean? Like, I would love for her to be the established scientist that like, all right, maybe she has a 5-minute scene in another movie when they need help with something, or
Well,
another TV show.
Listen,
I was gonna say, what's really smart about that idea, Ian, actually, is that we're so far into this franchise at this point that we've sort of lost an audience layperson, and to have that character kind of there for the new phase to just sort of say, here's what's going on, and as quickly as possible isn't the worst idea. And having Kat Dennings be that character, I think everybody would be on board with.
Also, I need the entire government, I don't care if they have to restructure things, to make it so that Darcy and Jimmy Woo just hang out all the time. Like, figure out a way. They have such fun dynamic. They're so refreshing. Every time I see them, I'm having a good time. I just, like, I mean, when she was like, do you want one? And he was like, a little Jimmy Woo, I've always thought about. She was like, it's a chip. It was so fun and so good. And I think that Marvel, like, obviously we've had some flashbacky movies that were fun. Like, obviously Captain Marvel has some hilarious sequences. But I think bringing the fun back, bringing the, like, a little bit of, like, you have superpower. I mean, the moment, I'm getting back to the plot, the moment when Wanda and Vision both float in their house against each other, like, that is more terrifying to me than seeing a planet explode, because it means something and it's in a setting I have context for, and it's two characters I care about. And so I just love their appreciation for that, how comic booky and bizarre and how impressive superpowers are is so useful at this moment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, it's such a genius thing to, like, bring things back down to earth a little bit, and to bring some, like, humor back in. It, like, balances things nicely in the real world setting.
I agree with that. Yeah.
No, sorry, I just got so distracted. My husband just sneezed across the room and tried to keep it really quiet so it wouldn't be on the podcast. It was so cute. Sorry.
But I like that Monica comes up with the idea for the drone. They get in. So Wanda's talking to the kids. We do get another moment of break where, so because Monica had the reveal of she says the kids are hers. She said Wanda's only warping reality, right? Like, she says the kids are hers, and getting, like, Wanda can't quite get the kids, you know, in that first beat in the opening when she tries to make them go to sleep. And she's like, why aren't you doing what I'm telling you to do? And it's like played as a cute sitcom moment, but realistically you're like, ooh, that's bad if she thinks she can control, like, every human being around her, even her children. But, like, we get it here again because Monica, you know, finds out her outfit was Kevlar. So Wanda can only transform things. She can't, like, create things, I guess, right?
Right.
So the twins are like, why is that at work? It's Saturday. And she's like, no, it's Monday. And they're like, they don't buy her bullshit. They don't, like, it seems like they're not susceptible to her powers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're immune to all of this, it seems.
Yeah, because they're kind of just like, no, it's not. And then she gives them this, like, weird, sometimes daddy needs a break, but daddy still loves us just the way you're brothers. And, like, it's very, like, she's definitely like, it's a reach, Your Honor, and she's going for it. She's like, anything I can say that will work, that you will buy, we will go with that. But then they hear the fucking drone.
I mean, that's fucking parenting. And also, it's so good to have the kids there, because we do need to know the limits of Wanda's powers here, right? Like, she can't just do anything. I mean, it was a good moment. I don't know if this is true or not, and I certainly hope it's true, that she's like, I can't bring back the dead. And, like, good. I need to know that you can't do that, because you know, it gives us something to work with as we wind down, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that has to be because, like, if that scene isn't there to illustrate that fact that she cannot raise the dead and probably did not do this to Vision, someone else did this to Vision, then there's
But also
no
Vision's a robot, right?
Well,
Like, so
yeah, but like I think like that was put in there for a very specific purpose because these episodes are not long.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and this was a very long amount of time unless they really, really wanted to do a dog tag scene, which upset like half the people in my DMs. They were like, I had people being like, "Oh God, we're like watching this with my kids. Can someone tell me if this dog dies or not?" And I was just like, "Yeah, you can just fast forward to minute
Wait.
32."
Completely unrelated thought, but now that I'm thinking about all of this, since Tony Stark created Jarvis, and in the MCU, Jarvis eventually becomes Vision, is Tony Stark the twins' grandpa?
No.
Wow. Grandma Gwyneth Paltrow is
Oh my God.
not something she will allow.
Okay, I'm just telling you
Girl,
that
Control
Pepper
Alt
Potts
delete
would.
that thought. Control Alt delete that thought.
Just send Jeff of Randall Park saying that's an oversimplification.
Okay, so like we got to get to this drone strike because I have feelings and thoughts, girl.
Great, we're there. Go.
The
What are your
moment-
thoughts, Aaron?
Okay, listen. The moment that Miss Mamas steps out the barrier,
Full dark yellow, full
So I have been talking with a lot of Black women about Wanda, and like a lot of them agree that there's something about Wanda. Like, obviously, she is of Romani heritage, but like there are some things to the way that she reacts that feels very woman of color. And this is one of them for me. It's like, listen, I know y'all out here like running up my light bill, but I'm gonna need you to stop.
She truly went out there and said, like, get off my fucking lawn. Like, get off of my lawn. Go home to your parents. You're ruining my bushes. Like, and it was so, it's not only is it cathartic, it's also just so real to be, to me, to be a woman who's like, you are not respecting that I am in control of this situation, especially for a woman of color to be like, I have power and I'm not going to make any bones about like, oh, you have guns, cute. You know what I mean? And it was a good moment. It was a really powerful moment because it reestablishes like Director Hayward, who gives a shit? Like, what are you?
Right, yeah.
Right. That's what I mean. She like basically almost like decapitated Thanos, like, and so she's like not really going to be bothered too much about this guy. And like it really is. And Aaron, I told you this on Twitter, but it's like she understands the theatrics that are needed right now because she could have levitated that drone, but she chose to drag it across the grass and be like, "Is this yours?" Like she understood that what was needed was her to put her hand on it and drag that thing.
Aaron, that's funny that you said that because I thought like this is very Puerto Rican mom being like, I'm gonna slap the shit out of you in 1 second.
Listen, and it's one of those things that what I love about women of color is that their reactions, like one reaction can be copy and pasted to a myriad of circumstances. Case in point, oh, I found your little like floozies like panties in my car. Get your shit. Out. Like it just feels very much so like what we're not going to do on this evening of October 21st.
Like that was like my grandma coming out of her room with her chancla ready to like slap me with it.
Yes,
like, I heard what you were doing.
But also the Magneto daddy flex too. Like it just that for me, and I like love the first X-Men movie so much. And it was just very much so giving me the scene when Magneto is holding all the cops like hostage outside of the train station. And he basically tells Xavier, like, girl, if you feeling froggy, leap. Like, if you really about this life, you can let one of these officers catch this fade. And toodles. Like, very much that. And it feels good for, like, I don't know, and especially with perceiving her as like kind of having these traits of a woman of color. Like, if we are going to demonize her, then let me be the head demon in charge. Like, I might as well give you what you want. And she did.
Well,
and she truly was like, you want a psycho witch villain? Great. I could do that. I could do anything.
I feel like that would also be very Magneto, that like swish flick with her wrist she does.
Yes.
Oh my God, yes.
She had just had.
It's such a good, so dramatic because it's like You literally mean nothing to me. Like,
Yeah,
that's
she gives off woman of color, but she does also give off woman raised by a gay man.
right. She's also giving like Patti LuPone stopping the show midway to be like, you were told to put no cameras. You were told at intermission, you were told at the beginning. We will now go back we will go back 5 minutes in the play. Okay, go back 5 minutes. Okay, now we're gonna stop. Okay, now see everybody here. Everybody paid their money. You were told twice now to do that. You chose to do this. We have now stopped the show. We are gonna rewind 5 minutes. Everybody take a break. We're gonna go back. We're gonna start again. All right, start again.
Now I just want Patti LuPone as an MCU villain.
Oh my goodness.
she'd be great. So I wanted to talk about her accent because I can't decide. It comes back. I understand why it wouldn't be because she's trying to like fit in, right? So I get why the sitcom it would be. We don't need the accent. She's trying to fit in her best. She can magically make herself not have an accent. Sure, whatever. But I couldn't decide how I felt about the accent because it was only a little bit there. But her accent, Elizabeth Olsen is showing that she has the range in this series. She is showing it to me. She's proving me wrong. I always felt about her accent before. Then they kind of were just like, okay, we don't really need it. But
don't you think the accent of it all is like, I mean, I get gayer when I need to accomplish things sometimes or for a purpose. Right. And I have a feeling that she walked out there and she was like, with the dramatics of it all, it was like, my Eastern European accent will terrify you. I am from a shithole and I have raised myself up to this. You think that you're going to tell me what is what? Like, I felt like she put it on to a certain extent, and that's fine. That's a totally valid choice. It was like a code switch for her.
And I also, like, that is a great point, actually, because I was going to say, like, her being inside of Westview, like, she is attempting to assimilate. Like, she just wants to sort of blend into this American ideal. And so for a Sokovian citizen, who's essentially a metahuman or mutant, or I don't know what to call her in this, but she needs to blend in. And like, I feel like it's kind of on the nose, like they're cheeky little bastards for doing it this way. Like having it manifest just like right when she steps outside the bubble. But I feel like narratively speaking, it makes sense to me.
Oh, it totally does, because as you said, the entirety of Westview is all about her assimilating into this idea of what she wants to be, but they outside are treating her as such other, and it's like Ryan said, when she steps outside, she's like, you want other, well, I'm gonna be other.
Basically, she's like, I am too tired to smooth out my accent for you people right now.
You know, I guess that does go back to your point, Aaron, of like, now I'm thinking again of how I said it was like my grandma, but like how my mom or my grandma, when they were yelling at me, then it would sometimes be full Spanish, sometimes it would be Spanglish. But I guess you're right. That like makes sense for that because it's like they're just fucking pissed, so they're just gonna yell at me. Whatever comes out, comes out.
Yeah.
So then we get the Lagos commercial. For when you make a mess, you didn't mean to. Like,
so good.
Immediately when that logo came up, I was like, fuck.
These commercials are literally just her trauma. Like,
I loved at the end too. Like they wipe away and the logo comes up, but we still hear it dripping because it's like that's not clean.
It's hardly.
And it's like looks like blood.
So I keep hearing people say, like in the articles when I like, oh, maybe these are her parents or whatever, but like if we're playing by the rules now set up, these have to be like real people. These are people in Westview who are just two people that must have really caught her eye the wrong way when she walked into town because she has doomed them to like the worst part of
those people are absolutely going to pay for Hulu Plus without ads in the future. They do not want to see another advertisement.
I'm done with
No, and I said this before we went on the air. I'm kind of obsessed with the commercial mom, this woman who has been trapped in the commercial purgatory, because of all the citizens trapped in this hex, this spell, like she got kind of the bummest deal of all. And what I love about this actress, whoever she is, she literally looks beleaguered. And it's not just infomercial beleaguered. She looks tired. It's like every morning she wakes up and she's like, what now? Is it going to be a ShamWow? Is it going to be cigarettes? Is it going to be a bubble bath? Are my kids going to fucking spill punch on the couch? This is my hell now.
Yeah. Every 5 minutes she's in a new loop of there's gotta be a better way. Like, and she's in that problem. I'm telling you, if she must have, like, in real life before this hex kind of got set down, she must have, like, bumped into Wanda coming into town and told her to watch where she was fucking going. And, like, got
she was like, you know who I hate? Sokovians.
Wow.
So literally right after this, Wanda just like threatened the lives of all of the entirety of Sword. She comes in and it's like, oh, my kid's dog died and I have to deal with that. Great. And like Agnes is Catherine Hahn's doing some really good acting because she's still doing sitcom mom, but she also is like confused and a little scared because I would imagine she's like, is Wanda gonna kill me because the dog like died on my property?
It's a little Twilight Zone, It's a Good Life kid.
Yeah.
They're a little like, well, something's gonna happen. And I think that mailman is gonna get like choked out by Wanda at some point if he makes one more damn comment.
He's just the messenger. He already told y'all.
So the kids have that talk with her, and Elizabeth Olsen's acting in the scene is so good because, again, she's doing that, like, if you keep talking about this, I'm going to lose my mind look in her eyes where she's, like, ready to cry, and the kids are just, because they don't kind of fall in line, they're like, but we saw you do it. She's like, shut the fuck up, please. And, like, her acting is just so good. It like literally is what you said, Ryan, earlier. That's exactly what she's doing again. And like poor Wanda has to do this like 85 times a day. So that then Vision and Wanda have their confrontation. The credits roll scene is so fucking good.
Yeah.
So good.
And I know you're trying to get us, I know you're trying to keep us on time, but I want to talk about one pre-credits moment that I think is absolutely apropos to Slayer Fest 98. Paul Bettany is giving full beginning of season 6 Giles to his Dark Will. He's giving full "you're a rank, arrogant amateur." He is like very calmly, angrily explaining he unearthed the man's suppressed personality and spoke to him free of your oversight. Like he is like it is absolutely emotionally beat for beat how Giles would confront Dark Willow before things got very, very ugly.
Michael, Ryan, you both work in television. Do you guys think like someone in the writer's room was like a big Buffy fan? Because I feel like someone had to have been.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no question. Also, the reality is that Buffy did change the landscape of how this kind of storytelling is done. So even if these writers were not directly Buffy fans working in the landscape, they're influenced by it anyway.
Yeah.
But I think scenes like this and scenes like the musicless beats where Ryan previously referenced the body, that's intentional. And they know what they're doing for sure.
Yeah,
I would say it 100% agree. And also just like, if you are someone who's going to work in like the MCU and you're at this level of talent, I not to be like a Buffy elitist, but I just think like it would have been something you liked. And I think Buffy has influenced so much stuff and it continues to have. There's still things in Buffy that no one has copied that can be mined and that haven't been properly explored in other works yet. And I feel like we're getting a lot of that, like what would happen if you had infinite power and were like in grief. Like that's a real, that, you know, like not necessarily making her a good person or a bad person, just sort of like if you had infinite power and you were in grief, this is how it would play out. And that is, you know, it's interesting to see, not just because it's an interesting what if, but also because like some people in the world do. Some people in the world have infinite power and their emotions rule how they choose to use it. And it is very interesting to watch, you know, Jimmy Woo, who's just like a regular dude, being like, that's very overwhelming, you know?
I mean, yeah, and like, again, this is one of those things that I felt I know we already talked about Dark Willow, but it feels very Dark Willow because, like, I just want Wanda to be happy, but also Vision is right.
Yeah.
Right? Like, everything he's mad at her for, he has every right to be pissed at her. He's like, that dude at my work has a sick dad that he can't contact because of what you're doing. I don't want this. Like, I don't want this to be our life. I don't want this to be the world we live in. And Wanda's just like, please let me have this one happy thing, please.
Yeah, Ian.
Well, it's also very Dark Willow because it's like, how does this resolve, right? Like, I don't think this resolves with a snap. I don't think this resolves with a punch. I don't think this resolves. It resolves with a conversation and saying, like, I'm dead. You have to let me go. It's okay. And like, that's how all of this, because Wanda at this point, whether or not she's behind this, whether or not she's the battery powering all of this, is way too powerful for this to end any other way. She's not even on this plane of reality, you know?
Yeah.
Last night I was talking to Ian because we were watching Infinity War, and another kind of blink and you miss it moment kind of like, really jumped out at me, especially hard after having seen episode 5, is at the end of Infinity War when Wanda is literally like in the middle of blasting the Mind Stone out of Vision. Where he says like, you could never hurt me, and then it was just like, oh, she did find a way to hurt him. Like, it's like, it was like having this moment of like, you're not only hurting me, you're hurting all these people. Like, we are all trapped in pain. Like, this has gone on. Like, this is, and it's, I think where we're going is going to speak to a lot of really, really important themes that we all need as a fucking culture right now, which is, like, your own personal grief versus the macro of like what it's doing to all of us.
Well, it's so heavy. I mean, we want Wanda and Vision to be together, but what is slowly happening for Vision right now is the realization is he's not her husband. He's her prisoner. And
Right.
the fact is this is a bit of grief that is very difficult because it's the realization that your partner doesn't actually belong to you. She has to let him go, but she can't. And this is a whole thing. I mean, it is a whole thing.
I mean, it's also just such a great, like, if we're going to extend this to like why this is resonating so well in the moment, it's like, in many ways, and everyone's going to laugh at me, in many ways, Wanda's an anti-masker because Wanda just wants to live in the suburbs in her regular life, but 400,000 people are dead. And what you're doing that you think is just your day-to-day going to the store is harming scores of people you'll never meet. And that matters. And so like, you can't, like, at some point, the people in those people's lives, the only way that stops, the only way that those people stay home or put on their fucking mask or get a vaccine is if someone in their life is like, the person close to them is like, stop. Like, I'm going to make this real for you because it's me. And I've had that conversation with family members who weren't obeying rules or who, I mean, fucking Trumpy family members is having that conversation of like, you think what you're doing is not a big deal and because it's not a big deal to you. But like, it's a huge fucking deal to me and you love me. So stop. And like, she is running from that conversation. They walk up to it, they do all the buildup, and then it stops. I mean, if we're gonna, the doorbell rings and she's like, I didn't do that, because she has done that a lot in this show. We've seen her create excuses or distractions. She says in the episode, sometimes daddy needs a distraction. Well, I think also maybe this is whatever brought Evan Peters' Pietro back. Maybe Wanda needed a distraction because she was getting a little too close to that conversation or that realization, which whoever's doing this cannot have. We cannot have, Wanda learning to put on her mask. We can't because we want to kill all these people.
I was going to say, but the reality is with those kind of conversations, Ryan, as you said, having them with family members, is they can ignore it for only so long. You can only blip out the conversation until you have to confront it. And that's what we're hitting the head here. She can't just say no and rewind the track now. Like, we're moving too far past that.
Well, Michael, I was just going to say, can they ignore it? Because like, I have people in my life who they have not lost an ounce of energy ignoring this conversation that I had like a million times.
Yeah, but active ignoring doesn't mean ignorance. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. Yes. Because like when you choose so vehemently to look the other way, it's there and you're doing everything in your power to not talk about it, which means it consumes you in a very different way. Like, when you choose to be willfully ignorant of something, there is a point where maybe you just don't know about it. But when the world, your reality, your family, all of it keeps coming to your door every day, there is a point where you can no longer say this isn't happening. It's just you choosing not to talk about it. And so people are just like, oh, he doesn't know. They know. They know that this virus is happening. Vision knows that he's a prisoner. All of these things, it's just like you can't. There's a point where you can ignore it, maybe, but you really can't. And it will bring you down.
At some point, your gay son, you're going to catch him doing something gay, and you're going to have to admit that you have a gay son. You can't live in the ignorance of, like, I really feel that Wanda is trying to suppress not just people's personalities, but, like, not just like people, but like Vision. She's trying to like make him be something that he isn't. She's trying to make her children be something that they're not. And at a certain point, people's identity, like, you can choose to live in that ignorance, and it will consume your entire life. But people's identities are going to come out one way or another. They're coming out. Like this is going to happen. And I think Wanda's like delusion. I mean, maybe we're seeing her evolution from like denial stage of grief to whatever, like to whatever they have planned to portray the other stages. But denial is usually, I mean, in my experience, denial for me is the longest stage of just like, even when you're just like going about your day-to-day life and you've lost someone. I mean, just you have to get through the shower. You have to get through making breakfast. You have to get through. Right. So denial is like this wonderful blanket. And I think maybe when that collapses, we'll just start like Wanda's just going to start running through these horrifying emotions. I'm actually worried about a lot of those townspeople. Like I have a feeling that Marvel's not just going to have her slaughter all of them, but it is a possibility on the table of just like, you know, well, I'll start eliminating people that are a problem and keep this going longer, you know?
But so that end scene, I thought the entire fight was so good. I thought this was, and they've had a lot of good scenes together, but I thought this was their best scene of the series so far, where like they are both fucking acting and they're doing it like he's doing it in this red face, like clown makeup, but he's pulling it off. And I don't know, the emotional beats of them, these two like very powerful people flying in the air, screaming at each other, but not like he's only floating because he's so angry, right? He's not like actually going to attack her. And we know that wouldn't be his character. He's like floating because he can't like contain his anger, and she just kind of meets it. Which also, because to her, I'm sure that's nothing. Like her powers don't like she's doing a lot all at once all the time. And so for her, it's like, well, I'll meet him and I'll yell at him on his level. And I just like, I still don't think Wanda's 100% in control here. Cause like, I do believe when she was like, I didn't do that when Pietro knocks on the door, I do believe that she didn't do that.
Yeah.
And she did see like the look on her face. I mean, again, I've said this like 80 times and I think they're keeping it vague on purpose. When she looks confused and shocked and upset, it all kind of blurs together. So I was like, does she not recognize him until he says who he is? Like when I rewatched it,
I believe
I was trying to think of that. Because in my mind, the first time I watched it, she was just so shocked to see her brother. But the second time I was like, oh wait, I think it's that she doesn't quite get who he's supposed to be, because Aaron Taylor Johnson is her version of her brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I mean, once again, Darcy is so good because Darcy's like gasp of she recast Pietro, while like we're also learning that is just like so over the top, but like works and so good, right?
I mean, it was works so well in a sort of Buffy-esque way in that it is a funny line. It is well-timed relief for the audience. It fills in people who have not seen the X-Men or Marvel movies. Like my husband has seen a handful, but when we're watching WandaVision, like I mean, as was said earlier, like there's a million times to pause and be like, okay, so everyone in the world disappeared. You know what I mean? Like you have to explain a lot of shit.
Well, also, like my husband would like, I swear to God, like if we had watched Days of Future Past yesterday, he would be like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah,
100%.
When
Yeah,
he's done with it, it leaves his head. Like,
so it was very useful to give us it to like clue people in, but it's also just, I mean. It is also a great way to explain this in the short term. Like they have to have some explanation. Like he can't just like walk in and this is a person that we've never seen in the town and it's her brother. Like we we need some sort of something to hold us over for the episode in which, you know, he's going to be around and we're going to act like this is normal, at least temporarily. I'm assuming we're going to get like next week will be the Sabrina the Teenage Witch, like Halloween special episode or whatever. And he'll be around and be like just like, I've always been a character here. Nothing's different or whatever. And we needed that like short-term like patch so that the audience will just at least go with it for a little while. And the recasting, I mean, it's just like that for me, that moment for me is the show. That's like the vertical slice of the show for me. And I loved it so much.
Well, he's going to be cool like Uncle Jesse. He's going to be like the TJAF uncle. Like he's
I agree. I feel like he's going to be much more like a comic closer accurate, like comic close version of Pietro, who is a dick to Wanda.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. I mean, and Pietro in or Peter in the X-Men universe is dirtbag Quicksilver. So like, this is going to be great.
I mean, I think what's interesting about this though is that like this also goes to reconfirm like what the kids asked her, or what Agatha or Agnes asked her earlier, which is, can you bring someone back from the dead? And if that answer is no, this makes sense because guess who was running around in the 80s with the X-Men and X-Men Apocalypse? And it is Pietro. So like that just level of intelligence, it's so great. But I really think he is going to unfortunately be another male abuser in this this world that she's created. But I also think it's necessary. And I think it's necessary to show the way men perceive Wanda and the way that they control her as well. Because we haven't gotten a lot of that with Vision. And there are a few comics where Vision is doing the most. But I feel like Pietro is such a great combination of how all the men in her life treat her.
But he also knows her, right? Like Vision knows Scarlet Witch and he knows like, you know, this Avenger, but Pietro knows like the little girl or like the young woman trapped in an insane asylum institution type setting. Like this is someone that like he knows the darkness. There's not a lot there's not a lot he doesn't know about her life at this point. And so to bring him in at this moment when the delusions are starting to slip is very inconvenient for her.
Do we think they're gonna?
People think. Oh, sorry. Go.
I was just going to ask, do we think they're going to address the fact that at one point in comic book history they were raised by a like magic nanny cow, or is that not going to happen? Like,
I think that might be one of the things we winkingly allude to, but then gloss over.
Bova has been like an MVP reference on this podcast.
We have referenced Bova like. I think the first 2 episodes we talked about Bova.
On, you've been referencing it, so there's something to that. Yeah.
But so I'm not sure where all of you land on this. I knew Evan Peters was in the show because I follow a lot of spoilery people, and like months ago, someone had retweeted him on set. It was like, oh, Evan Peters is on set. He either is playing Quicksilver or Speed. Like they like wasn't like nailed down that he was playing Pietro, but I kind of assumed he was.
I had no clue.
Okay. Aaron, Michael?
I mean, I definitely knew.
I only knew because I was actually online doing some promo work for my job, and at like 12:15, someone like posted a "what you order from Wish and what you get" like meme. And
fuck that person. Fuck that person. I'm sorry. People had to smash that like so bad you were gonna ruin it. Like, come on.
No, and that was at like it was like 12:15 on like, you know, Friday morning. Like that, like
wow.
The show was barely like warm in the oven. And I saw that and I was like, okay, well, I guess I know this happened. Luckily, so much else happened in the episode that I didn't feel like, you know, kicking rocks like Charlie Brown. But I was just sort of like, really? This is what you have to do with your time. Okay.
Fuck that. No, I was gooped. I was it was a like drop your whatever you're holding moment of just like, what? Wait, what? And then I watched it without my husband because he's been in and out. Like he likes the show a lot, but like obviously he's not like a Marvel head.
Right.
But I was like, sit down. We are watching this. Like, I don't even care if you don't appreciate this moment. I want to be with you in this moment because it was so good. But some people think that he is that is Mephisto putting on like a face or whatever, or like a costume. I do not think that's the case. I think we're actually getting like
Yeah.
like Quicksilver. I think that he's a mutant. Like,
but, like,
that's what I think is happening.
why is he there? What summoned him? Did Wanda's grief summon him, and he is sort of just was called and doesn't really super know? Or did someone send him in like the dad in the Truman Show being like, shit, she's starting to figure it out. We gotta send him.
Did the kids do it?
What?
Because she had that conversation where she was like, Mommy's sad and her brother's very far away. And because they don't know he's dead, maybe they were like, we'll bring in the brother. And they don't know where they're pulling him from.
That's correct.
Well,
okay.
Interesting.
Because
Yeah.
Billy's powers are a lot like hers,
Yes.
so that would make sense that he could, like, as a child, kind of not knowing but knowingly, like, do something like that.
Yeah, I don't think Pietro is a bad thing. I actually don't. I don't think that there's anything menacing from him specifically. Maybe his presence, but I don't think he himself is malicious. I still, I really think what we're gonna get is Mephisto either as a little girl or some other like Scrappy Doo type addition to the show, like some kind of like Poochie that is so annoying that like we have to eventually confront the fact that this person doesn't like fit into the show, and that will be sort of how this unravels if it is like if he is the villain. There's so much up in the air. There's so many ways they could go. And what a wonderful gift to have a show that could go in any direction right now.
I know.
It's
Imagine,
so
like,
fun.
imagine if it was bingeable. We'd all know all of this by now.
I know.
It would be. This wouldn't live in our heads such as much. This is great.
But I also want to point out one detail that I think is very interesting, and I don't think it is going to, with no pun intended, blossom until later. And that is the use of flowers and plants throughout the show. So I would point you to, first off, like the plant that Agnes gives her has grown immensely over like the decades. But then also the azalea bush that she's referring to is also like very identical to this flower that grows on Wundagore Mountain, which is where Wanda and Pietro come from. And I know in the modern like Scarlet Witch Silo series, that flower is a crucial part to both manifesting like her mother's magic and also dousing it out. So I'm very, very curious. I mean, you also saw the flowers behind the stork too in that episode. I think this is something to keep an eye out for. I know it sounds bizarre, but...
No, I also think there's been some tiger imagery that I've been noticing. Ralph is referenced to be like a tiger.
Mhm.
There's a tiger on the table. There's been some tiger stuff, some bees, some like plants. Something is going on with the stuff in the town because it's also not made of nothing, right? Like they said, she cannot create anything. She can like transform things. So everything in that town is made out of something. And I'm wondering if we're seeing some of these Easter eggy or like these repeating themes or whatever are sort of like they're going to be baked into the undoing of all of this. And that will make it whatever the reveal is, will make it very fun to watch this 1,000 times with like an Easter egg guide or whatever.
I also hope that Ralph is like Maris Crane and that we never ever see him and he's just like a sitcom gag. But also it is notable that could just be a sitcom convention because there are characters in sitcoms that are always alluded to but never seen. But because he's referenced in every episode, we haven't seen him yet. That also could be something that to come when we meet Ralph. Will Ralph really be who we think he is? You know, because we know that Agnes is already more tapped in than others. So
I hope it's just Ralph. I hope it's just Ralph. I hope it's just I hope she's just playing along and she was like, okay, this is my role.
This is John Goodman as King Ralph.
Well, okay, so I said this in the last episode, I think, that we recorded. So they make a point to use masculine when referring to the person in witness protection program. I was in my brain, I was like, oh, it's got to be Agnes, but now I'm like, my new theory is that it could be Wonder Man. Simon.
Yes,
right? Wouldn't that make sense?
It would make sense. And I've been waiting for them to like slide him into the MCU this way. for such a yes, 1,000%.
But okay, so we have finished the episode. This episode's going a little long. Favorite outfit, Michael?
Oh, Catherine Hahn's 80s leg warmer headband, aerobicide video outfit. Yeah.
Ryan?
Sparky's dog collar.
Aaron?
It's gonna be Monica's Kevlar bell bottoms.
Oh, hell yeah.
Adam?
I like seeing the return of Wanda's regular real life. Gonna go get your gear. She's got her long coat.
Gonna go get you gear.
Gonna go get your gear. Yeah,
she's an old leather daddy.
She's I'm gonna. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Strap up.
So my favorite outfit is the Wanda's suspenders and the button up. I think it looks very cute. Favorite scene, Aaron?
The get your ass off my lawn and stop running up my light bill scene.
Ryan?
The Pietro reveal, but not the reveal itself. The Darcy saying she recast Pietro in disbelief. Just adorable.
Adam?
I'm gonna have to echo Aaron, but especially the end because I just invested in a nice surround sound speaker, so my subwoofer hit the shit when she walked.
I just did too.
When she walked back in to Westview, and then the music comes in. And everything goes red, and it's this chorus of oh my god, it hit every little spot in my head.
Michael?
I spoke to this a little bit while we were talking, but my moment is definitely when Agnes is wanting to take it again, and it gets really awkward because surrealistic discord always speaks to me, and that moment is just so uncomfortable. So yes. I thought it was great.
My favorite is I just love that final end. I'm cheating a little bit, but once the credits roll, but it's the fake credits and their fight leading up to Pietro's reveal, that whole thing was just so tense and so well acted and so well done. I don't know. I loved that whole final 10 minutes or so. What would we like to see moving forward, Michael?
Oh, what would we like to see moving forward? I don't know, but if one of the Magnetos wants to show up as dad, I wouldn't be upset about it.
Adam?
I would probably say I would love for I'd love to see Quicksilver get paid off. Obviously they're going to do this, but you never know. I'd love it to be paid off in a more expand that scope. Have him kind of continue to really expand the scope of not just because this really is they were not expecting this to begin phase 4, but now it is. And I think definitely this is a perfect sort of beginning to that. So I think really showing how much this is expanding it more than just, oh my God, it's the same guy coming over. I would love to know, I would love to hear more about who sent him, what he's there for, more than just a cameo. I'd like to know a little bit more.
Ryan?
I want the wheels to come off of this whole reality, this whole delusion with hex, spell, whatever. I want the wheels to come off of it, but only in the way that wheels come off of television shows. So I want a jump the shark moment. I want people to just start being recast or missing, or I just want it to fall apart the way that television shows fall apart. If they want to do Game of Thrones final season and just have the writing get really bad on the show itself. That would just be spectacular. I hope that obviously we're going to go into whatever Sabrina Halloween special is next, and then I think it's Modern Family. I don't know what the 2020 sitcom, if we're going to get one, is. I certainly hope it's The Good Place or something. But I really just want it to feel like we're getting really late in a beloved TV show. And I hope the writers are as committed to that, and it doesn't just switch over into MCU we're done with the TV show thing. I want them to finish it with a bow, please. If we're not going to get a season 2 or something.
Yeah, I feel like to that, I feel like I'm really excited for the Modern Family part of it, specifically the confessional part, because I think that's going to be really key. I think it's going to fit very nicely emotionally with where she's at, because I think she's going to get more and more isolated within this show. It's going to be less Vision and Wanda banter. Like it's going to be way more like she is making choices that is isolating her from even Vision, because it's very clear at the end of the episode that like she's doing this for us, but then like he's like, well, I don't want to be part of that, and she's like, okay, it's for me.
Right, she's becoming her own prisoner.
Right. So I think those confessionals are going to be really important stylistically to being like, well, she's just talking to herself
now. Aaron?
I want House of M drama and and I say that in the sense like it would be interesting for like Lorna to pop up. Because Lorna is referenced in like the X-Men franchise. It would be I don't know. But I feel like more importantly, like all the comic book BS aside, what I want for her to come out of this with is like her and Monica having a very beautiful friendship.
Yeah, I would like that too.
Yeah.
Moving forward, I want more. I don't know that this is like possible, but I would love more like kind of what you said, Ryan, where like it gets more unhinged, and I want like more ridiculous things like the Pietro reveal. Because I do think it's like her world is cracking. She is becoming a prisoner in her own prison. I just that shit, I love it. Now we're gonna grade the episode. I give it an A. Aaron, what grade do you give it?
Yeah, A+.
Ryan?
A+. I mean, is there something above A+?
That's
Adam?
just Drambuie,
yeah. Michael?
A+.
All right, cool. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for listening to our WandaVision coverage. It's been a lot of fun yelling about this show. If you want to find the podcast, you can find us all on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can follow us on social media at SlayerFestX98. You can subscribe to our Patreon, which helps keep the podcast going. We get access to mini episodes, like we're currently covering Firefly. And all support is appreciated. If you want to follow us on social media, we are at SlayerFestX98. I am Ian X Carlos on social media. Michael, where can everyone find you?
You can find me at Michael Varrati on Twitter, Instagram. That's it. Don't follow me on Facebook because I never check it. So,
and Ryan, where can everyone find you?
Please visit inputmag.com, a very good website that I happen to work for. And I also have a podcast there. And I'm at Ryan Houlihan all over the internet. You're an adult. You know how to find me.
Aaron, where can everyone find you?
So you can find me at magical.poppy, and that is PAPI, on both Insta and the Twitters. My podcast, Findy stuff. Oh my God, my brain is fried. You can find me at Stand By Me on both Twitter and Instagram as well.
And Adam?
You can find me on Twitter at @TheAdamSass, on Instagram at @It'sAdamSass, and you can pick up my young adult queer thriller debut novel, Surrender Your Sons, wherever you buy your books.
And we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
bye.